Hey, welcome back to GTM. So not that long ago, I did a review on the Cold Steel Finwolf, and I said it was probably one of the best folding knives that I'd ever gotten, purely due to the fact that it had a triad lock, it was a Scandi, and it was a handle that was mostly usable, but far too thin. And the steel choice I thought was pretty weak, very soft, but it fulfilled a spot in the market. Mosquitoes are so bad right now. And then I went to the Ultimate Hunter, an orange Ultimate Hunter in CTS XHP. And I kept the Finwolf because it's very unique and it serves a purpose. I really like it. Then I went to the Ultimate Hunter, and that also was unique enough to serve a purpose. I really liked it quite a bit. I still have it. It's definitely in the rotation often. And CTS XHP is my favorite steel if I'm not looking for a carbon steel. There's definitely, O1 and stuff like that. If I'm going for a carbon steel, I've got preferences that I would choose instead, mostly for sparking off rocks and things like that. But as far as a folding knife goes, CTS XHP is really hard to beat. The thing with those two knives is I looked at the two, I thought this would be cool if they could merge these two, mosquitoes, if they could merge these two and they could become one knife, like the Finwolf's kind of grind, hopefully a Scandi, the quality of steel from the Ultimate Hunter, and the handle that would be just the two of them kind of put together, but thicker, bigger, better. And I saw something last year at the Blade Show that really got me thinking I could probably buy it, because I don't like to buy a whole lot of blades. You guys watch this channel, you know that I really don't need a whole lot. I just need a few to fulfill most of the things. But I really wanted one that would have a great handle. And so I saw this blade right here, the Cold Steel Bush Ranger. And I thought, wow, that blade design, it's not a Scandi, and it does have some cutouts where I don't really prefer them, but it reminds me a lot of the Finwolf handle. And, well, it's S35VN, so it's a little bit better blade steel. So I got kind of excited about that. I started looking at some specs on Blade HQ, where I do not buy knives because they're ridiculously overpriced, and I don't like their advertising. And I saw this handle scale specs were bigger than the Ultimate Hunter, which right now the Ultimate Hunter was the best handle scale combination for any cold steel that I had owned. And I prefer cold steel because of that triad lock. I gotta have it. It's like once you tried it, you kind of have to have it. It's very strong, it locks nicely, and I don't actually think it's that hard to use. Some people have a real tough time closing these, and I can understand that in the first week when it hasn't been broken in, but anyways, this blade really got my attention. So I'm going to tell you a couple things right off the bat. This isn't a review, it's just kind of initial impressions. I've only had this for a few weeks now. So right off the bat, I'll tell you, I got the knife and it was very, very tight, really tight. That's not always a bad thing because knives break in. They're kind of like a rifle. This rifle, although the chamber is still pretty tight, other things like the bolt loosened up a little bit and smoothed out a little bit. Sometimes you just got to use a thing. And this was an example of something that was extremely tight. Everything about it was just tight. It was so hard to close. You couldn't close it one-handed. You had to use two hands because, first of all, there's a different design in here with the triad lock. It's beefed up, and so it's just very rigid. And I knew right away, I held the knife in my hand, and the inner scales, which I sand down on all my other cold steels, I knew I was going to have to pop the knife apart and sand down those inner scales as well as remove this needless hump right here. My first comment, I'm not really doing a review, but my first comment is, it's called the Bush Ranger. Unfortunately, they wrote that in big text up here. It's kind of ugly, but it's called the Bush Ranger. Nothing bushcraft or bush related should have sharp edges except for the blade edge and the spine. Nothing else. There shouldn't be hooks and little knobs and things like that on there. If it's a fighting knife even, that's just not comfortable, I wouldn't think. So I sanded that down and made it a much more gradual kind of area where the ricasso, or whatever that's called, this area would be. And then I sanded down the inner of the scales, because here's the thing, this knife is really thick. It is really thick, and it grinds down to an okay edge on the bevel. It's not the best I've seen from cold steel at all. This knife could shave hair right off the bat out of the box. Of course it could, that's like a minimum expectation. But I noticed it's just a little thick behind the edge. I'm going to have to thin this down. The nice thing is it's got kind of, I don't know what you call that, a sword grind? Something like that, saber grind. Well, it starts up here, and so I can lay this on a stone and get this down to almost like a 0-degree edge like I have on my Finn Wolf. And so that's a positive anyways, is it's fixable. But it's not the best edge, really. I mean, cold steel, I paid the most for this that I have for any cold steel knife. I paid $100 for this. And that's a good deal compared to other people that I know. So, I don't know, it should have come with a much better bevel. If you're going to do woodworking, and I have, this edge sucks. I've done a lot of woodworking with this, actually. A lot of you know, if you've watched my other videos, that I carve in my free time quite a bit. This edge sucks for anything wood related. It'll probably hold an edge a good long time, even for S35, but I don't know. They should have done it differently. Anyways, moving on. Taking this knife apart, first of all, was a bear. You really had to pop it apart, and I was kind of worried I was going to break the G10. I didn't, so that was good. But I got it apart, sanded it, put it back together. Looks like it's not quite as tight as when I first had it. I did tighten it down everywhere I could. The next thing I did for modifications, right out of the box basically, this pocket clip is the worst pocket clip I've ever had on a cold steel, including the Recon. Now this G10 is fantastic, it's very smooth, I really like it. And the ergonomics, now that I've sanded it, it's great. This is probably the top cold steel handle for me, honestly. It's not that far off from a fixed blade. In fact, I have mosquitoes everywhere. I have some fixed blades with thinner scales, thinner handle profile. But when you have a thicker blade stock, this is trying to get to earlier. I'm all over the place. I'm sorry. I'm scatterbrained. When you have a thicker blade stock, it means they have to have a thicker, liner and all that. And on the other side, there's more of a gap for your fingers to get wedged into. I really would have preferred to see this very thin, like 3 mils at the most, maybe thinner, maybe 2 mils thick. And I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. I think that's 4 mils. I would have liked to see it half that and kept it very slicey. But the way they went, it's kind of tankish, and I don't know. Inside of those scales, though, you could fit a lot of meat, and it was sharp, initially. So after sanding it down, now it's just fantastic. When I'm using it, I suppose this grip works fine. That's the intended grip, right? But I like to sneak my hand up here and get as close to that edge as I can. Anybody who does woodworking or actual bushcraft, rarely do you see them doing this. I know some people, that's their method and all that, great for them, but the people who are really good at woodworking and bushcraft, most of them understand that almost every tool, hammer grip or reverse hammer grip, is how you use a knife, how you use most tools. A hammer, you don't grab a hammer and hold it like this for the most power. What you really want is a hammer grip. And so the handle needs to be comfortable for a hammer grip. And I can say successfully now, it is comfortable for a hammer grip. Even with this right here, I thought this was going to be a killer and I was going to have to get creative with sanding that deal down, but I didn't have to. So I'm pretty happy about that. I really like the blade profile. Overall, aesthetically, if that's something you care about, I think it's a cool looking blade. It'll freak people out a little bit if you whip this thing out, because it's a tank. I did break it in, and now it looks like the triad lock is smoothed out quite a bit, so I'm really happy to see that, because it was so incredibly difficult to work with at first. It really hurt my thumb, and I've never struggled with a triad lock before, not a single one. And this one, it was very tough. Something unique about this is this back piece that engages the actual blade. On most of them, there's just kind of a half moon cutout for the triad lock to engage around this pin in the middle. In here, sorry, right there. Like a little half moon, and they meet up together, and there's a gap on top. And this one, it actually looks like a roofing hammer in there. It's a very different design. If you buy one, you'll have to take it apart and look at it. And that explains why it's so tough and so strong. I bet you this is stronger than some of my Moras, the fixed blade, three-quarter or partial tang blades. I bet this is stronger. It just really seems tanky. S35 yen is a decent steel. It strikes a ferro rod just fine. It holds an edge up here just fine, as well as down here. In fact, I've been trying to dull it out pretty heavily the last 2 weeks so that I can reprofile it, because it just sucks to me. But it's been holding edge pretty well. It's not like CTS XHP. I'm pretty sure it's not going to be up to that standard at all. But it's a good working knife. And oh yeah, I don't know if I've even finished this thought. Pocket clip. The pocket clip, it was just so incredibly tight. That's what was bad about it. And it was so tight. And so all I did, and here's an easy fix, is I backed out these screws a little bit, took a couple out actually, and then I put it down and I Loctited them, and I just barely snugged them up until it looked like they were making contact with the bottom here. I'm sure you can't see it all that well, but just snugged them up until it was easy in and out of the pocket, not too, not that I'm going to lose it or anything, but just not too tight anymore. And it looks just fine. Doesn't look like they're going to walk out on me. It's not rattling around or moving a whole lot, maybe just a little bit. But that really nice smooth G10 now functions great, and I love it. Now with those modifications, I love it, but I'm going to have to do an actual review over time, and we'll find out, because people change their mind on these things pretty frequently. I know some people have had it for a week and they're already telling everybody to go buy one and stuff. I'm not saying that. I wanted to buy this knife to check it out, try it out. So that's pretty much all I have for you guys so far. If you have questions or comments, make sure you post those in the comment section so that I know when I do my actual review to hit on those things, so I don't skip over it, because it's really frustrating. I watched some of the other reviews and they did a great job as well, but my questions weren't answered. I had to buy one so that some of those questions could be answered, and now they are. But yep, be looking for a review on this maybe in the next month. If I use it heavily and I really get a good feel for it, maybe in the next month. I'm not a fan of rushing to reviews just to get views. Like, I do this for fun. I'm not paid anymore. I don't have any benefit of this. I just want to help other people buy good products, and I only want to endorse good products, so that the crappy things that Cold Steel, Savage, anybody else, the things that they make, if it's crap, I don't want it to get sold. I want them to see that only quality products are going to get purchased, and only things that function properly, So anyways, Cold Steel Bushranger. Pretty cool blade.